Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 6 years, and even now many alien species still watched humans with quiet caution. Humans were known for their strange mix of stubborn courage, emotional thinking, and unpredictable decisions. Some species admired that, while others saw it as a weakness. Captain Elias Ward never expected that any of it would matter to him personally. He lived a simple life working as a salvage pilot near the outer asteroid belts, collecting abandoned ship parts and drifting technology to sell back to trade stations. His ship was old but reliable, just like him. Elias preferred the quiet of space over crowded planets. He liked routine missions, clear tasks, and long hours alone with the hum of engines. He was not famous, not rich, and certainly not important in any political way. That was why the message shocked him so deeply. It arrived without warning, interrupting his navigation system with a priority signal so powerful it froze every other function. The holographic image that appeared showed a tall alien figure surrounded by silver light. The being spoke in a calm, precise voice that translated automatically into human language. Captain Elias Ward. You are requested by royal command to appear before Her Majesty, Sovereign Queen of the Valtharian Empire.
Elias stared at the projection, convinced there had been some mistake.
The Valtharians were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in known space. They rarely contacted individuals directly, especially humans. He checked the authentication code twice. It was real. The message continued. You will travel immediately. Coordinates have been uploaded. Delay is not acceptable. The projection faded, leaving the cockpit silent except for the soft buzzing of equipment. Elias leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. Why me? He muttered. He tried contacting the nearest human authority, but even they seemed confused. The Galactic Council confirmed the invitation was genuine and advised him to cooperate. That only made the situation stranger. After a long moment of hesitation, Elias adjusted his course toward the given coordinates. As his ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, he felt a quiet sense of unease. Salvage pilots did not receive royal summonses. The journey lasted 3 days. During that time, he researched everything he could about the Valtharian Empire. They were known for strict traditions, advanced technology, and a deeply hierarchical society built around honor. Their rulers rarely showed emotion publicly. Their decisions were always calculated, rarely impulsive, which made the decision to summon a random human pilot even more confusing. When his ship exited hyperspace, he found himself facing a planet so beautiful it almost felt unreal. Massive floating structures circled its atmosphere like silver petals around a flower. Energy shields shimmered softly, reflecting distant starlight. A fleet of royal escorts approached immediately, guiding him toward a docking platform large enough to hold entire cities. Elias felt suddenly small. The landing was smooth, and before he could even stand up from his pilot's seat, a group of tall alien guards entered the hangar. Their armor looked like living metal, flowing gently as they moved. They stood in perfect formation and waited for him to exit. He grabbed his jacket and stepped down the ramp, trying not to show how nervous he felt. One of the guards stepped forward. Captain Ward, you will follow. No explanation, just command. He followed them through long corridors made of polished stone that seemed to glow from within. The architecture was elegant but cold, shaped with sharp angles and wide open spaces that made every step echo. Other aliens watched him quietly as he passed, their expressions unreadable. Eventually, they reached a massive set of doors. The guards stopped and the doors opened slowly with a deep humming sound. Inside was a grand hall filled with nobles and officials arranged in neat rows. At the far end stood a raised platform where a single figure waited. She was taller than most Valtharians he had seen in images, her posture perfectly straight, her clothing shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes were sharp and steady. When she looked at him, he felt as if she could see every thought in his mind. Elias walked forward, aware of every eye watching him. He stopped several steps away and bowed slightly, unsure of the proper greeting. The Queen spoke without delay. "Captain Elias Ward of Earth, your arrival is acknowledged." Her voice was calm, almost emotionless, but carried authority that filled the entire hall. Elias nodded. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I don't understand why I'm here." A faint murmur spread through the court at his directness. The Queen did not react. "You are here because I have chosen you." Those words only made him more confused. "Chosen me for what?" The Queen paused, studying him carefully. Then she spoke words that made the entire room feel suddenly heavier. "You will marry my daughter immediately." The silence that followed was overwhelming. Elias felt as if he had misheard. What?" he said before he could stop himself. The nobles shifted slightly, some showing surprise, others clear disapproval. The Queen remained calm. "You will marry Princess Sarai. Preparations have begun." Elias's mind raced. Marriage? To an alien princess? He barely understood their culture, and they knew almost nothing about him. This had to be some misunderstanding. "With respect," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "I think you might have the wrong human." A few quiet sounds of shock came from the court again. Humans were known for speaking freely, but this level of honesty was unusual in royal halls. The Queen tilted her head slightly. "There is no error." Before Elias could respond, movement at the side of the hall caught his attention. A tall figure stepped forward. She looked younger than he expected, but carried herself with strong confidence. Her eyes were bright and intelligent, though there was tension in her expression. She glanced at Elias briefly, then at the Queen. "Mother," she said calmly, "I was not informed that the announcement would occur today." "This decision is final," the Queen replied. Elias sensed discomfort between them. The princess seemed polite, but clearly unhappy. Their eyes met for the first time. For a moment, neither spoke. He expected arrogance or coldness, but instead he saw curiosity mixed with frustration. The Queen continued, addressing the court. "This union represents a necessary step toward the future of our empire." Some nobles nodded. Others looked deeply troubled. Elias felt as if he had walked into a story that had already begun without him. After the formal gathering ended, he was escorted to a private chamber overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, but he barely noticed it. His thoughts kept returning to the Queen's words. A soft chime sounded at the door. Princess Sarai entered. Up close, she appeared less intimidating and more human than he expected. Her expression softened slightly when she spoke. "I imagine you are confused," she said. "That's an understatement," Elias replied gently. "Did you know about this?" She shook her head. "Not until moments before you arrived." They stood awkwardly for a moment before she continued. "My mother rarely acts without reason. If she chose you, she believes it is necessary." "That doesn't explain why," Elias said. Sarai sighed quietly. "It rarely does." They spoke for a long time, sharing small details about their lives. Elias told her about Earth and his work as a pilot. She spoke about royal expectations and the pressure of growing up as heir to an empire. Despite the strange circumstances, he found himself enjoying the conversation. She was thoughtful and intelligent, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than politeness. Yet tension remained between them, created by the forced nature of the situation. "I do not wish to marry someone who feels trapped," Elias said honestly. Sarai looked at him with surprise, then nodded slowly. "Nor do I." That honesty created a fragile sense of trust. Later that night, Elias stood alone by the window, watching ships move across the sky like distant stars. He realized that whatever reason brought him here, was far larger than a simple political marriage. Somewhere behind the Queen's cold command was a deeper plan. And whether he accepted it or not, he had already become part of something that could change not only his life, but the future of two worlds. Morning came in a way Elias had never experienced on Earth. The light outside his chamber did not rise as a single sun climbed the sky. Instead, soft bands of color spread slowly across the horizon, like gentle curtains being pulled open. 2 pale moons hung above the city, and the floating platforms glided silently through the air as if the whole world was breathing. Elias had barely slept. His mind kept replaying the Queen's words, the shocked faces in the court, and the look in Princess Sarai's eyes. He was not sure if he was a guest, a prisoner, or a tool being used for someone else's plan. A quiet tone sounded in the room, and a small hovering device floated near the door. A calm voice spoke in translated English. "Captain Ward, your attendance is required for instruction in royal protocol." "Of course it is," he murmured. He dressed in the simple clothing provided for him, smooth fabric that adjusted itself to his shape. It felt comfortable but strange, like wearing something made from a soft metal thread. When he stepped out, 2 guards waited. Their faces were calm, their posture perfect. They led him through long, bright corridors into a training chamber where several Voltherian instructors stood waiting. They were tall and serious, holding thin tablets filled with glowing symbols. The lead instructor spoke. "Human captain, you will learn proper behavior within the royal domain."
You will not embarrass the crown. Elias kept his expression neutral.
"I'll do my best." That response earned him a cold stare, but the lesson began. For hours, Elias practiced greetings, bows, and formal phrases. The Voltherians were precise. A bow that was 1 finger width too high was considered careless. A pause that lasted half a second too long suggested disrespect. Even the direction he placed his hands carried meaning. Elias tried to follow each correction, but it felt like walking through a field of invisible lines. On Earth, he had been trained in military protocol, but this was different. This was like learning a language made of posture and silence. When he finally finished, he felt exhausted in a way space travel had never caused. A guard guided him toward a dining chamber. The room was open and wide, with long tables carved from a single piece of dark stone. Noble families sat in small groups, speaking quietly. As Elias entered, many eyes turned toward him. He was the only human there. He forced himself to walk steadily, not rushing, not hesitating. He sat where the guard indicated. Servants placed plates in front of him, filled with foods that looked unfamiliar but smelled pleasant. Across the room, Princess Sarai sat with a small group of advisors. Her posture was calm and formal, but Elias noticed her eyes briefly glance in his direction. There was no smile, yet something in her gaze felt less cold than before. While he ate, he heard whispers. Some voices were curious, others sharply judgmental. Even without understanding their language fully, he could sense the tone. The word outsider appeared several times in the translation feed on his small wrist device. Elias finished his meal quickly and stood, but before he could leave, a tall noble approached. His face was narrow, his eyes sharp. "You are the human," the noble said in English with a stiff accent. Elias nodded. "I guess that's obvious." The noble's mouth tightened slightly. "Do not mistake your invitation as acceptance. I get to give your dog, so let dogs—" "Many here do not approve." Elias kept his voice calm. I didn't ask to be invited." The noble stared at him for a moment, then walked away without another word. Elias left the chamber feeling heavier than before. The Queen's decision had placed him in a world where every move would be judged. He was not simply learning protocol. He was learning how to survive a place where tradition was stronger than kindness. Later that day, Sarai requested a private meeting. Elias was taken to a quiet terrace overlooking a garden filled with tall, crystal-like plants that shimmered in the breeze. The air smelled clean and fresh, like rain on stone. Sarai stood near the railing, her hands resting lightly on the smooth surface. She did not look at him right away. "You are being watched," she said. Elias gave a short laugh.
"I noticed."
She turned slightly. "It will not stop. Not until the Queen's decision is proven wise or proven foolish." Elias studied her face. "And what do you think?" Sarai's eyes narrowed briefly, as if she was deciding how honest to be. "I think my mother rarely chooses without purpose, but I also think she forgets that people are not pieces on a board." Elias nodded slowly. "That's a problem I understand." Sarai seemed surprised by that. "You do? On Earth, I've seen leaders move people around like numbers," Elias said. "It never ends well." A small, floating, bird-like creature moved between the plants, its wings making a soft humming sound. Sarai spoke again.
"You asked yesterday why she chose you." "Yes."
She looked away, her voice quieter. "I asked her the same question. She told me only that you have the kind of strength the Empire needs." Elias frowned. "Strength? I'm not a soldier anymore." Sarai glanced at him. "Strength is not only battle. My mother believes your kind survives through change, not through control." Elias considered that. Humans did survive through change. They had always adapted, even when they made mistakes. Still, it felt strange to be described as some symbol. He leaned on the railing. "Sarai, I don't want to be your problem." Her eyes met his. "You already are." The words sounded harsh, but her tone was not cruel. It was honest. Then, unexpectedly, she gestured toward the garden path. "Walk with me. If we are going to be forced into the same story, we might as well understand each other." Elias hesitated, then followed. As they walked, they spoke more freely than they could in the court. Elias told her about his mother, who had worked long hours on Earth to keep their home stable. He spoke about learning to fix engines as a child, about the quiet comfort of working with his hands. Sarai listened closely. Then she shared her own life. She spoke of endless lessons, of being trained to speak perfectly, to move perfectly, to hide weakness. She admitted she had never taken a walk without guards until she was older. Elias looked at her in disbelief.
"You mean you never had a normal day?"
Sarai's expression turned slightly bitter. "I do not know what normal means." Elias felt something shift inside him. For the first time, he stopped seeing her as only a princess. He saw her as a person who had spent her whole life carrying a weight she never chose. They reached a quiet stone bench. Sarai sat, and Elias remained standing, watching the sky. She spoke softly. "You are not like the humans shown in our reports." Elias smiled slightly. "What do your reports say?" "That humans are loud, impatient, and driven by emotion." Elias laughed. "Some of us are, but not all." Sarai studied him. "Then perhaps that is why she chose you, a human who can be calm in pressure." Elias was about to reply when a distant alarm sound echoed faintly through the air. Both of them froze. A guard appeared on the terrace path, moving quickly but still controlled. "Princess! Captain! Return to the palace. Now."
Elias's heart tightened. "What's happening?" The guard's face stayed unreadable.
A security incident. They were escorted rapidly back through corridors. Elias could feel tension spreading through the palace, like heat. Guards moved in sharper formations, doors sealed behind them. Nobles gathered in small groups, speaking quietly but urgently. Elias and Sarai were taken into a smaller hall where the queen stood with several military advisors. Her expression was as calm as ever, but her eyes were sharper than before. "A threat has been detected," she said. "An attempt was made to disrupt today's ceremonial gathering." Elias glanced around. By who? The queen's gaze shifted slightly. Those who believe tradition must be protected at any cost. Sarai's hands clenched briefly at her side. Elias noticed. Before more could be explained, another alarm sounded, closer this time. The advisors began speaking quickly in Valfarian language, and the translation device struggled to keep up. Then chaos erupted. A section of the hall exploded outward. Not a violent fire, but a burst of energy that shattered stone into dust. Guards rushed forward. Nobles screamed and scrambled back. Elias felt his instincts kick in before his mind even processed what happened. A dark figure moved through the confusion, fast and focused, heading straight toward Sarai. Elias saw something sharp in the attacker's hand, glowing faintly with energy. It was not a weapon meant for war. It was meant for one person. Elias did not think. He moved. He grabbed Sarai's arm and pulled her behind him, stepping forward at the same time. The attacker struck, aiming toward Sarai, but Elias caught the wrist and twisted hard. The weapon clattered to the ground. The attacker tried to break free. Elias shoved them back, hard enough to throw them into a guard rushing forward. 2 guards pinned the attacker instantly. Elias stood, breathing heavily, his heart pounding. Sarai stared at him, her eyes wide, not with fear now, but shock. The queen watched, her face unreadable. Yet there was something in her gaze that seemed like quiet calculation. Elias turned toward Sarai. "Are you okay?" Sarai touched her arm where he had pulled her. She nodded, slowly. "Yes, because of you." The hall slowly regained order. Guards surrounded the area, dragging the attacker away. The nobles whispered even more intensely now. Elias could feel their attention shifting. Not only was he the outsider, he was the outsider who had protected the princess. That mattered. Afterward, Elias was taken to a secure room with Sarai while the queen handled the aftermath. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of protective barriers. Sarai sat on a chair, still tense. Elias stood near the wall, trying to calm his breathing. "You moved without thinking," she said. Elias looked at her. "Yeah, that's kind of the point. If you think too long, it's too late." Sarai's expression softened slightly. Valfarians train for years to react with discipline. You reacted with instinct. "It worked," Elias said simply. She stared at him for a moment, then asked quietly, "Why did you do it?"
Elias blinked. "Because someone was trying to hurt you. But you barely know me." Elias shrugged, uncomfortable with the question.
"It doesn't matter." Sarai leaned back, her eyes thoughtful. "That is very human." The door opened, and the queen entered. The room became instantly colder. Guards remained outside, leaving only the 3 of them. The queen's gaze moved between Elias and Sarai. "You prevented the attack." Elias nodded. "I did what anyone would do." "No," the queen said calmly. "Many would freeze. Many would hesitate. You did not." Elias felt uneasy under her stare. "So what now?" The queen stepped closer. "Now the court will watch you with different eyes. Some will fear you more. Some will respect you, and some will try harder to remove you."
Sarai's jaw tightened. "Mother, this is becoming dangerous."
"It already was," the queen replied. Elias clenched his fists slightly. "If people are trying to harm your daughter because of this marriage plan, maybe you should stop it." The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, but her voice remained smooth. Stopping would show weakness. It would confirm their belief that outsiders disrupt our stability. "No, we continue." Sarai stood. "And what about my choice?" The queen looked at her for a long moment.
"Your choice is the future of the Empire."
Sarai's face hardened, but she said nothing. The queen turned to Elias. "You will remain under protection. You will continue protocol training, and you will meet with my advisors regarding upcoming public appearances. Elias felt trapped. Every path seemed controlled. Yet in the middle of it all, he saw something else. The Queen was not simply stubborn. She was preparing for something. When the Queen left, Sarai sat again, her shoulders tense. Elias lowered his voice.
Sarai.
I think we're in the middle of a power fight. Sarai nodded slowly. Yes, and you are the spark. Elias looked down, feeling the weight of that. I didn't want this. Sarai looked up at him. Neither did I. But now, it is here. Outside the secure room, palace lights shifted as emergency protocols activated. The Empire was still calm on the surface, but underneath, cracks were forming. Elias realized something important. This was not only about a marriage, it was about who controlled the future, and if he stayed, he would have to learn quickly how to survive, how to read hidden threats, and how to stand beside someone who had never been allowed to stand freely. As he looked at Sarai, he saw her tension, her quiet strength, and her loneliness. For the first time, he wondered if they could become allies, not because the Queen demanded it, but because they might need each other to make it out of this alive. The palace felt different after the attack. The shining halls remained beautiful and calm, but the air carried tension that Elias could feel with every step. Guards stood closer together. Their movements were sharper, more alert. Even the nobles spoke in quieter voices, as if afraid that their words might be overheard. Elias woke early, unable to sleep deeply since the incident. The image of the attacker rushing toward Sarai replayed again and again in his mind. He was not a soldier anymore, yet his body had reacted without hesitation. Part of him wondered if that was what the Queen had seen in him. Not strength in battle, but a refusal to freeze when danger appeared. A soft knock sounded at his door. When he opened it, Sarai stood there without guards. That alone told him something was different. You came alone? He asked, surprised. She nodded slightly. I wanted to speak without an audience. Her expression looked more serious than usual. Elias stepped aside, allowing her to enter. For a moment, she said nothing, simply looking around the room as if gathering her thoughts. The court is changing, she said finally. Some who ignored you yesterday now speak your name with respect. Others speak it with fear. Elias gave a tired smile. That sounds about right. Sarai studied him carefully. You are calm about it. I've learned that panic doesn't help, he said. Besides, I didn't come here looking for enemies. She crossed her arms lightly. You may not have looked for them, but you have them now. Elias sat down on the edge of the chair near the window. Tell me honestly, who wants this marriage stopped? Sarai hesitated, then answered. Many traditionalists. They believe our empire survives because we do not change easily. A human joining the royal line threatens that belief. Do they really think I'm that dangerous? Elias asked.
Yes, she said simply. Humans are unpredictable.
You do not follow strict emotional control. That makes you difficult to understand. Elias leaned back slightly. Funny. On Earth, people say humans are easy to read. Sarai almost smiled at that, but her expression returned to seriousness quickly. There is something else, she said quietly. The attacker was connected to a powerful military faction, not a random extremist. Elias frowned. So someone important is pushing this. She nodded slowly. General Kael Varen. He has strong influence in the court. He believes tradition must remain pure. He sees this union as weakness. Elias thought about that. A powerful general opposing him meant more danger ahead. Before he could respond, another chime sounded. A servant drone hovered into the room.
Captain Ward, Her Majesty requests your presence. Sarai's eyes shifted slightly.
she rarely requests twice. Elias stood.
Guess it's time to get answers.
They walked together through the palace corridors. This time, the whispers felt different. Some nobles nodded respectfully toward Elias. Others avoided eye contact completely. The queen waited in a private chamber filled with tall windows overlooking the city. The light outside reflected across the floor like flowing water. She turned as they entered. Captain Ward. Princess Sarai. Elias bowed slightly, still careful with protocol. "You requested me, Your Majesty?" "Yes," she replied. "There are matters you must understand." Her voice sounded calm, but Elias sensed something deeper beneath it. She dismissed the guards, leaving only the three of them in the room. The queen walked slowly around them, as if studying a painting from different angles.
"You have questions," she said. "Yes," Elias answered honestly.
"Many." She stopped in front of him, then asked. Elias hesitated, only briefly. "Why me? Out of all humans, all diplomats, all warriors, why choose a salvage pilot?" The queen held his gaze. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she spoke. "I studied many humans before selecting you. Soldiers, politicians, scientists. Each possessed useful qualities. Yet most were driven by ambition or pride." Elias remained silent, listening. "You," she continued, "demonstrated resilience without seeking recognition. You survived dangerous situations, not through aggression, but through adaptability. You protected strangers without expectation of reward." Elias felt uncomfortable hearing his life described like a report. "That does not sound special," he said quietly. "It is rare," the queen replied, "among both humans and my own people." Sarai watched silently, her expression thoughtful. The queen continued, "My empire faces stagnation. Our traditions give us strength, but they also limit growth. We have become predictable. Our enemies learn our patterns. We risk becoming fragile." She turned slightly toward the window. "I believe the future requires change, not abandonment of tradition, but evolution." Elias slowly began to understand. "And you think bringing a human into the royal line forces that change?" "Yes." Sarai spoke for the first time. "Mother that treats him as a symbol rather than a person." The queen looked at her daughter. "Symbols shape history, but I did not choose him only for symbolism." Her gaze returned to Elias. "You challenge assumptions simply by existing. Your actions yesterday confirmed my decision." Elias crossed his arms. "That doesn't mean I want to be part of royal politics." "No," she agreed calmly. "But you are already part of it." The room fell silent. Elias exhaled slowly. "So I'm here to help your empire learn how to change?" "In part," the queen said. He shook his head slightly. "That's a heavy responsibility to put on one person." The queen's expression softened just slightly. "You will not carry it alone. My daughter stands beside you." Sarai's posture stiffened at that, but she did not argue. The queen stepped closer. "There is more. Our enemies prepare for conflict. A rival species has increased activity near our borders. I require a future leader, capable of thinking beyond rigid doctrine." Elias understood now. She was preparing Sarai to rule differently. After the meeting ended, Elias and Sarai walked quietly through the corridors. "Well," Elias said after a while, "that explains a lot." "Yes," Sarai said softly, "and complicates everything." They spent the afternoon visiting training areas where Elias observed Valtherian combat methods. Everything was precise, disciplined, and structured. Nothing was left to chance. He noticed how every move followed strict patterns. During a demonstration, One instructor asked for his opinion. Elias hesitated but spoke honestly. It's impressive, but predictable. The instructor frowned slightly. Predictability creates efficiency. It also creates weakness, Elias said gently. If enemies learn your patterns, they can counter them. Some observers whispered quietly. Sarai watched him with curiosity. Later, she asked, "Is that truly how humans think?" "Many of us," he said. "We improvise. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't." She considered that deeply. That evening, news arrived from a border colony. Enemy forces had launched a sudden attack. The palace shifted into strategic mode instantly. Advisors gathered. Tactical displays filled the war chamber. Elias stood near the back, observing. The generals discussed defensive formations based on traditional strategies. He listened carefully. Their plan was logical, but rigid. Finally, he spoke carefully. "May I say something?" The room grew quiet. The generals looked at him with mixed expressions. The queen nodded.
Speak. Elias approached the display. Your formations are strong.
But they assume the enemy will follow expected routes. What if they don't? They always have. That doesn't mean they always will. Elias replied calmly. On Earth, enemies change tactics when they know you expect something. He suggested a flexible strategy involving smaller mobile units reacting dynamically instead of waiting in fixed positions. Some generals objected immediately. It lacks structure. It risks disorder. Finally, she said, "We will implement a modified version of Captain Ward's proposal." Hours later, reports arrived. The colony was saved. Enemy forces were forced to retreat after encountering unexpected resistance patterns. The room filled with quiet shock. Elias stepped back, uncomfortable with the attention. Sarai approached him later. "You changed the outcome." He shook his head. "Your soldiers did that. But your thinking allowed it," she said. For the first time, admiration appeared clearly in her eyes. As days passed, public opinion shifted. Citizens spoke of the human who helped save lives. Even some nobles softened their opposition. But not everyone. In a dark chamber elsewhere in the palace, General Kael'Varen watched reports with narrowed eyes. His belief remained unchanged. Humans were chaos, and chaos could not be allowed to guide the Empire's future. Back in the palace gardens, Elias and Sarai walked quietly. "You are changing things," she said. "I'm just being myself," he answered. She smiled slightly. "Perhaps that is exactly what needs to happen." Elias looked at her, realizing how much their relationship had changed. The distance between them felt smaller now, not because of the Queen's command, but because they were beginning to understand each other. Yet beneath that growing trust, danger continued to rise. The general's resistance had not disappeared. It had only become quieter, more careful, and Elias sensed that whatever came next would test them more than any training or strategy, because change never happened without resistance. And the closer they moved toward the future the Queen wanted, the stronger that resistance would become. The palace entered a strange calm after the victory at the border colony. Reports praised the new strategy, and many citizens began speaking about the human captain with curiosity instead of suspicion. Yet beneath the surface, tension still moved like a hidden current. Elias could feel it in the way guards watched more closely, and in how certain nobles avoided being seen near him. The wedding ceremony approached quickly. Elias felt uneasy about how fast events were moving, but every attempt to slow things down met polite resistance from the Queen's advisors. The Empire had already begun preparing for a public union, and backing away now would show weakness. He stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching ships glide through the sky. The air shimmered with soft light, and distant music echoed from somewhere below. Despite the beauty, his thoughts were heavy. Sarai joined him quietly. She no longer moved with the same distance she had shown when they first met. There was warmth in her presence now, though responsibility still weighed on her shoulders. "You are thinking too loudly again," she said gently. Elias smiled faintly.
Is it that obvious?
"To me, yes," she replied. They stood side by side in silence for a moment. "I never imagined my life would turn into this," Elias admitted. "I used to worry about broken engines and trade routes. Now I'm preparing to marry a princess while half the empire watches." Sarai looked at him thoughtfully. "I have imagined this moment all my life, but not like this, not with someone chosen by another." Her honesty made him pause. "Do you regret it?" She hesitated, searching for the right words.
I regret losing the freedom to choose.
"But I do not regret learning who you are." Their relationship had begun as forced cooperation, but somewhere along the way, trust had grown quietly between them. Before Elias could respond, a guard approached and bowed slightly. "Princess?" "Captain, the Queen requests your presence in the Grand Hall." They exchanged a glance and followed. The hall was filled with advisors and military officers. Holographic displays showed security arrangements for the upcoming ceremony. The Queen stood at the center, calm and focused. "The ceremony will proceed as planned," she announced. "However, intelligence reports indicate increased activity among traditionalist factions." Elias crossed his arms slightly. "General Varen?" The Queen inclined her head. "Yes. His influence remains strong. He believes the marriage threatens the Empire's identity." Sarai stepped forward. "Has he openly challenged you?"
No, the Queen said. But silence can hide preparation.
Elias felt tension rise in his chest. "Then we should expect something during the ceremony." "That is likely," the Queen replied calmly, "which is why I require both of you to remain alert." The meeting continued with detailed plans. Guards were doubled. Surveillance increased. Yet Elias sensed that even the Queen understood security alone might not stop someone determined enough. Later that day, he walked alone through a training chamber, replaying possible scenarios in his mind. He had learned enough about Valtherian customs to move confidently now. But politics still felt like walking through invisible traps. "You look ready for battle," she said lightly. "I hope it doesn't come to that," he answered. "But something feels wrong." She nodded slowly. "I feel it too." They trained together for a while, practicing defensive movements. Unlike the strict Valtherian style, Elias used flexible motion, adapting based on instinct. Sarai tried copying him, laughing quietly when she stumbled. "This is chaotic," she said. "It's called improvisation," he replied with a grin. As they practiced, their movements became more synchronized. For the first time, Elias realized they trusted each other, physically as well as emotionally. That connection felt important. The day of the ceremony arrived with bright skies and crowds filling the capital. Citizens gathered to witness the historic union between a human and their future queen. Music filled the streets, and banners shimmered in the air. Inside the palace, Elias wore ceremonial clothing that felt both elegant and uncomfortable. He looked at himself in the mirror, barely recognizing the person staring back. A salvage pilot from Earth had become the center of an empire's future. Sarai entered wearing traditional royal attire. She looked powerful and graceful. But when their eyes met, he saw nervousness behind her calm expression. "You look like you belong here," she said. "I feel like I'm pretending," he admitted. She smiled gently. "Perhaps we both are." They walked toward the ceremony hall together. Guards lined the path, their presence reassuring but also a reminder of danger. The hall was filled with nobles, citizens, and representatives from other species. The Queen stood at the front, waiting. As the ceremony began, the atmosphere felt heavy with expectation. Ritual words were spoken, ancient vows prepared. Then, everything changed. A sudden surge of energy flickered through the lights. The protective barrier around the hall shimmered and faltered for a moment. Gasps spread through the crowd. Elias's instincts sharpened immediately. From the far side of the hall, General Varin stepped forward, flanked by several officers.
"Stop this ceremony," he commanded loudly. "This union dishonors our ancestors." Guards moved, but more soldiers appeared, blocking pathways.
Chaos threatened to erupt. The Queen's voice cut through the tension. "General Varin, you stand on dangerous ground."
"I stand for tradition," he replied firmly.
"Our empire cannot be guided by human unpredictability." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Elias stepped forward slightly, keeping his voice calm.
"You think I want to control your empire?"
Varen's eyes narrowed. Humans always seek influence.
"I didn't even ask to be here." That honesty caught attention.
Sarai stepped beside him.
"General, this is not the way."
Varen's gaze softened briefly toward her, but hardened again.
"Princess, you deserve a partner who understands our ways."
"And perhaps I deserve the freedom to decide," she replied. The room fell silent. Varen hesitated, clearly conflicted. Elias realized this was not only about power, it was about fear. Fear of losing identity. He took a step forward.
"I'm not here to replace your traditions. I respect them."
"But every culture changes over time. That doesn't make it weaker." Varen said nothing. Elias continued, speaking not as a royal, but as himself. "Humans survive because we adapt. Maybe your empire doesn't need to become human. Maybe it just needs to learn from new perspectives." The tension shifted slightly. Some nobles nodded slowly. The Queen watched carefully, allowing the moment to unfold. Finally, Varen lowered his weapon. "If you fail, the Empire will suffer." Elias met his gaze. "Then help us succeed instead of trying to stop us." A long silence followed. One by one, the soldiers stepped back. The crisis ended not with battle, but with understanding. The ceremony resumed. When Sarai spoke her vows, her voice carried strength and certainty. This time, it was her choice, not only her mother's command. Elias felt something change inside him. What began as obligation had become partnership. As they stood together before the crowd, applause filled the hall. Citizens saw not an outsider taking power, but two individuals choosing cooperation. Later, standing together on the palace balcony, Elias looked at the city below. "So, what happens now?" he asked. Sarai smiled softly. "Now we build something new." He nodded, feeling both uncertain and hopeful. The future would not be easy. Change never was. But for the first time since arriving, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Not alone, but beside someone who understood him. And somewhere nearby, the Queen watched quietly, satisfied that her gamble had begun to reshape the destiny of her empire.